Hello everyone, welcome to the show today. In the first time ever, we are broadcasting live. Connection a little funky, but we are broadcasting live from another country. On the show today, it's a special episode. We are holding you over until we start the next round of Newsflash's episodes with a special as Bernie Sanders jumps in the presidential race. Obvious frontrunner, off to a great start already in 3 hours. He's raised $1 million. We're going to take a look at how Bernie can win, what to expect from his campaign, and yeah, what's going to happen. We will tell you. This is Newsflash live from abroad, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us here once again. Really appreciate it. The burn is in. That is it. It's that simple. We'll play his announcement video for you in a moment, but I would like to start the show with words of Matt Taibbi, who we have had on this very show before to talk about the last time Bernie ran for president in 2016. Didn't go as well as we would like this one to, but it happens, and he's out there. He's running again. And, yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about pretty much all of today. And, yeah, probably some of the best stuff on this is coming from Matt Taibbi, who has known Bernie Sanders better than any other journalist out there. And we're going to take a look at what he has to say in his article. Ending a lengthy period of deliberation, Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont, who won over 18,000 delegates and captured 43% of the Democratic Party vote in 2016, announced his candidacy in an email to supporters this morning. Brothers and sisters, Sanders writes, I've decided to run for president of the United States. Sanders goes on to promise an unprecedented and an historic grassroots campaign that will begin with at least 1 million people from across the country. And so far, there has been $1 million in donations in just over 3 hours and counting. Probably more than that. Probably maybe, I don't know, 1.2, 1.3 at this point. As we broadcast you live at noon Eastern time. Yeah, so Sanders goes on to promise an unprecedented historic grassroots campaign, and the email contains a lengthy list of policy positions Sanders expect to elaborate upon in the coming weeks. Sanders pledges to create a government based on the principles of economic, social, racial, and environmental justice, and then adds a coda to his familiar theme of taking on special interests, including those who have traditionally held sway as donors within his own party. So yeah. Of course, Bernie Sanders taking on the aggressive approach. And, I mean, again, probably the biggest drawback I could see to a Bernie Sanders candidacy is the fact that he's an old man. Like, it's just that simple. He's an old guy. You kind of want him to just go off in the sunset, and you would hope that at this point we are in a position where we don't need him to run to represent progressive policy issues. But I think we are very seriously at the point where we have to say, yeah, he's the best guy. It shouldn't really have to be him if you think about it, but in the world we live in, it does, in fact, have to be him. All right. Yeah, he goes on to further elaborate upon his policy position, saying, quote, I'm talking about Wall Street, the health insurance companies, the drug companies, the fossil fuel industry, and the military-industrial complex, the private prison industry, and the large multinational corporations that exert such enormous influences over our lives. In announcing his campaign 4 years ago in the short of Lake Champlain in Vermont, Sanders laid out a message-based campaign that he said was not about him, not about Hillary Clinton, and not about Jeb Bush or anyone else. This time around, his opening email seems to craft the same impression that winning and beating Donald Trump in particular is central to his thinking. He wants to win. He's in it to win it. He knows that there still are going to become some attacks against him about his possible ability to win. Even though he was in all polls, pretty much all polls, that put him against Donald Trump. Granted, some of those were before Election Day. He hasn't faced Donald Trump in a head-to-head election yet. But all the evidence that we have to our disposal right now, at this very moment, at this very time, would certainly and solidly suggest that there, without a doubt, Bernie Sanders up by at least 10 points on Donald Trump. But still, there is going to be those attacks from some people who maybe don't like Bernie for other reasons. They think that he is not going to be successful. in winning. So he really will come out and dissuade that right away. He took on some incredibly tough on Trump rhetoric, saying he writes about running against a president who is a pathological liar, a fraud, a racist, a sexist, he's xenophobe, and someone who is undermining American democracy, adding that Trump is leading us in an authoritarian direction. I mean, honestly, those things, again, you can see pathological liar, that's unequivocal. This, no doubt, is true. A fraud, obviously true. A racist, for sure. A sexist, for sure. A xenophobe, for sure. And someone, again, who is undermining American democracy. You can make the case for all those points there, and that's what makes opposing Trump so effective. Notice, he did not mention once under the influence of Russia, because that's not proven. That's not very likely to happen, especially at this point as we find out more and more about the campaign. He is focusing on opposing Trump and the policy, and that's definitely the direction the Democratic Party needs to go in to find some success. So, yeah, the senator is expected to have a busy schedule of events next week to help to introduce the key themes of his campaign, which are expected to differ somewhat from the last race. The second Sanders presidential campaign is bound to suffuse the Democratic primary with intense drama, as he represents one side of a profound argument tearing across the globe about populism. From the Yellow Vest protest in France, to the rise of Jeremy Corbyn's Labour Party in Britain, to the anti-austerity movement seen in Greece, the Netherlands, and Germany, voters are increasingly rejecting the neoliberal, corporate-backed economic policies that Western democracies have put in place for generations. The opening email by Sanders, as expected, argues the only way to unseat Trump is with a grand sweeping message that's in tune with his transformational moment in history. Sanders believes he will have to build an independent movement big enough to overcome deficits in corporate money and press attention. And so far, he has really quite succeeded on that front, saying, quote, "They have the money and power. We have the people." That is probably the fundamental belief, fundamental ideology behind every single progressive campaign. I think Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in her main ad said something almost to the T. Almost exactly that. She said, they have the money, we have the people. And he is so far showing that. $1 million in the first 3.5 hours of his campaign launch. Absolutely insane stuff. So, all right. Without further ado, we're going to play that launch message. We're going to play the message that he released to the... started a little bit already, but here, without further ado, this is the message that he released to his supporters and to his Twitter followers today. It's a 10-minute one that's a little bit longer, but we're going to play this one for you here. It's about 2 minutes, and we're going to play it here in full. This is captioned by the tweet, "I'm running for president. I'm asking you to join me today as part of an unprecedented historic grassroots campaign that will begin with at least 1 million people from across the country. Say you're in," and then it gives the address to donate, bsanders.us/TW. Here it is. Here it is, the big moment we've all been waiting for. Bernie Sanders is in.
Real change never takes place from the top on down, but always from the bottom on up.
Bernie Sanders' healthcare for all idea is gaining steam.
Free tuition. Free college tuition. Free tuition champion, Senator Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders added, "The greatest threat to national security is climate change.
The future of our planet is at stake."
Sanders taking on Amazon.
Bernie Sanders has been consistent hammering about income inequality.
Nobody in America works 40 hours a week, should be living in poverty. So our economy is rigged. We have a campaign finance system which is corrupt.
Sanders leading the charge to stop war against Yemen.
The first time ever the Senate has voted to end an unauthorized war.
The fight against injustice has been the work of his life.
Jobs and education, not jails and incarceration. We are not going to retreat on women's rights.
Sanders pushing a bold agenda that includes protecting DACA recipients and comprehensive immigration reform.
You don't rip little children away from the arms of their mother.
A major announcement from Amazon. Amazon will raise its minimum wage to $15 an hour. 350,000 workers.
Thousands of workers at Disney World will get raises. It's a victory for Bernie Sanders.
It's a victory for all workers. Brothers and sisters, we have a lot of work in front of us. If we are prepared to stand together, there is no end to what the great people of our nation can accomplish.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The announcement, the moment that we've all been waiting for. Bernie Sanders announcing he is running with probably the most, out of all the Democrats who have announced so far, probably second maybe to Elizabeth Warren, the most most policy-based ad or policy-based announcement video we have seen yet, hitting very important things. Not saying just spouting off random words like democracy, freedom, the Constitution, liberty. These are words. I'm Kamala Harris. No, he is really outlining his agenda of taking on Trump, standing up, you can see, for African Americans in the criminal justice system, countless labor issues, countless economic issues that were themes in his last campaign. He is expected to hit back on again. And that is what's going to be very interesting, very kind of prevalent, I believe, throughout this entire campaign that we're going to see from him. So yeah, hitting everything, not only hitting the policies, which is a big thing, but making the case about why he's the best to achieve them. And that's because he's gotten wins on those policies, he's pushed for those policies, and he's done it not 2 weeks ago when he got in the race as president, but his entire public career. That's what separates Bernie from the field. That's why the Bernie Sanders supporters respect him and admire him. Not because he's a sexy, hot guy, like some people seem to think, but no, because he's not been fighting for these things. He's been fighting for these things since before it was cool. He's fighting for gay rights before it was cool. He was fighting for raising taxes on the rich before it was cool. And that is not something you see from any politician out there, and that's what makes Bernie Sanders so different, so special. Yeah. His opponents, on the other hand, he's running against less specific. He's running less against specific opponents like Senator Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren, than more really against decades of pro-corporate policy endorsed by both parties, dating back to NAFTA and the deregulation of Wall Street. That's what he's attacking. In the visual version of that ad I just played for you, so you saw the big buildings, the talk of the rigged economy and all that stuff. Yeah, so the system-wide criticism, though, as we know, has not endeared him to party leaders. To say Sanders is a controversial figure in Democratic circles is a little bit of an understatement. And he should make this message perfectly clear in order to really help drive donations. Is the Democratic establishment is not going to make it any easier for him this time. It's just that simple. They don't want him then, they don't want him now, and they're going to push Kamala Harris all the way on that front. And will do whatever they really can do. So campaign postmortems from 2016 Ty B Reds, like Shattered and Chasing Hillary, as well as WikiLeaks dump of DNC and John Podesta emails, made perfectly clear what everyone in Washington already knew. The apparatchiks who run the party and sit in Democratic-line think tanks dislike Sanders with the heat of 1,000 suns. In some quarters, he may be resented more than Trump, among other things, because he represents a brand of politics that take aim at many Beltway sinkers. Or sinecures, I don't know if you're saying that right. So yeah, nailed that point there. So exactly, it's really kind of what Bernie Sanders represents these people. He represents the outsider, the guy who's going to change. He's going to rock the boat. And the people on the boat, they do not want to be rocked. It's just that simple. But the mass majority of Americans have seen that boat sail away from them and leave them on a stranded island. And boy, do they want to rock the boat. They want to tip the boat over. They want to burn it down. So yeah, that's the truth there. So yeah, Sanders can expect diffident treatment at best by the vocal commentators on TV and papers like the Washington Post and New York Times. One of them, Washington Post, published 16 negative articles in the span of just 12 hours on Bernie Sanders during the last primaries. And the New York Times has also been a big situation. Has been a big theme of his campaign. Strong opposition from the supposedly liberal Washington Post and New York Times. In those outlets, he's regularly derided as a line-jumping socialist peddling simplistic thinking, a geriatric Che, as Chasing Hillary chronicler Amy Chozick put it. The Yahoo report from earlier this year suggesting that Sanders would run imminently